Hey guys, it is really late at night, so this lighting and quality is probably not so good, but that's okay because I had this inspiration to film this video at this very second, and it is about tips, tricks, advice, experience on coloring and toning damaged and porous hair. Now, I'm not a professional, definitely not claiming to be. So from what I understand, basically when you damage your hair, most of the time by chemically processing, bleaching, your hair becomes damaged and oftentimes porous. And what porous really means, hair is stripped of all its goodness. The protective layer that coats the hair, all the proteins maybe, and moisture is kind of just taken away. The result of porous hair is that it's literally like so thirsty for all of the things that we've taken away that it soaks up product and color more than it should. So for example, if you have blonde porous hair like me and you put a purple based toner, maybe like Wella T18 on your hair may turn purple. Your hair was so porous that it latched on to the undertone of that toner more than it should have because your hair was just like, give me anything. So I am going to be going through 5 tips to maybe consider when you're coloring or toning your porous hair. But before that, I do want to kind of help you identify whether or not your hair is porous in case you weren't totally sure. Now, of course, looks can be deceiving. I find my hair actually looks decently healthy even though it is very porous. So if you have bleached hair, especially if you have bleached it multiple times and overlapped it in the same place multiple times, there's a good chance your hair is at least a little bit porous. Brittle, crunchy, or shredded looking, even kind of expanded feeling on the ends, almost like if you pinch it, like you can make it smaller. That kind of sounds weird. Another thing is if your hair takes forever to air dry, because porous hair tends to soak up water and hold water. It's grasping for any kind of moisture it can get. And I'm not talking like if you have a lot of hair or like really thick hair that just doesn't dry quickly. I mean like if you just have like thin or just like normal-ish hair. And if your hair is exceptionally dry, no matter how many treatments and moisturizing and oil and everything that you put in it, no matter what you do, it's kind of always feeling the same, then that could also be a sign. Okay, so now we're into the tips. So number 1, dilute your color for your most porous spots. Now chances are your hair is not totally damaged and porous from root to tip. Oftentimes it's your ends because those are your oldest pieces of hair and therefore have been damaged or colored or bleached the most. So for blondes, dilute the toner. Many liquid toners, such as the Wella permanent toners, instruct you to use on damp hair anyways, but you can, of course, make your ends more damp than the rest of your hair. The more water you add to your hair, the more diluted the toner is going to be when it goes on your hair. Just think about, for example, how much stronger paint is on a dry surface versus a wet surface, if that makes sense. But just make sure your hair isn't like dripping, sopping wet, because that can lead to kind of uneven results as well. If you're using a semi-permanent toner such as the Manic Panic Virgin Snow, sometimes if you have porous hair, even that can turn your hair purple by itself. You can use the Manic Panic Pastelizer or just conditioner to dilute that toner as well before you put it on so that it's not as strong and not as likely to turn your hair purple. If you're coloring your hair a darker shade, like maybe a light brown or a dark blonde, and you're kind of starting out with a blonde shade, I would suggest using 2 different colors. Use one shade for the top of your hair or the parts of your hair that really aren't that damaged, and then I would use one shade lighter for your ends and the parts that are more porous. Just make sure they're both the same like brand and formula and tone. So for example, if you're using a an ash tone on top, use an ash tone on the bottom, neutral on top, neutral on bottom. This will ensure that your ends don't soak up the color too intensely and too quickly, because when you do have porous hair, sometimes colors can turn a little bit darker and more intense on the porous parts than the more healthy parts. So by going one shade lighter on the porous parts, it kind of evens itself out. Of course, this has just been my experience. I've done that before. I've put a level 7 neutral blonde from my roots to mid lengths, and then I put a level 8 neutral blonde on my ends, and they've just evened out really nicely. Because if you have ever been bleach blonde and you pick out a light brown box off the drugstore shelf and you put it on your hair and it turns black, well, it's because you have porous hair and it's soaked up way too quickly. You left it on way too long, and it just soaked up way too intensely. So my second tip is to put conditioner on your porous parts while you're applying color to the rest of your hair. Then at the very end, you can kind of just wipe off with a towel the parts that you put conditioner in, and then comb through the color through the parts, and then kind of just wait a minute and rinse it out. That way you're not getting the color on your porous parts getting left on there for too long and then getting darker or discolored. So this brings me to my next point, which is leave the color or toner on for less time. For me personally, even though the Wella toners say leave on for 20 or 30 minutes or whatever it says, I leave mine on for 5 minutes. I leave mine on for more than 5 minutes, my hair will turn gray or whatever undertone of the toner that I'm using. Porous hair just takes less time to process and to soak up the color. Of course, that 5 minutes works for me. It's going to be different for everybody, so it may take some trial and error. It did for me. I've turned my hair purple, blue, and gray on many occasions, but of course it does wash out after some washes. So after some trial and error, you'll get more familiar with how porous your hair is and how long your hair really should have color on for. Of course, you can always do little test strips underneath with different time stamps to see kind of how long you really should be leaving it on for. Okay, so tip number 4 is use a porosity equalizer. There is one you can get at Sally's by the brand Ion. I don't have any right now. I used it all the last time that I bleached my hair. I will link that video down below though. You can see me spraying in my hair. You could also just, I'm sure, Google something in Amazon, porosity equalizer, protein filler, or anything like that, where it kind of just fills in the hair, makes everything a little bit more even so that it ensures a more even result. It was really cheap at Sally's, definitely like $5 I think. And my last tip is to prepare for coloring by doing treatments and things beforehand. And the more good stuff you can get into your hair beforehand, the less your hair is lacking, and therefore the less product it's gonna soak in, and the more safe results you're gonna get. You can check out any of my damaged hair videos. I will link those down below to find out all the different products that I really like to use to help moisturize my hair and repair my damaged hair. And one other thing I did want to mention is that sometimes hair can get to a point where it's so damaged and maybe so porous that it won't accept color anymore. I have gotten to that point multiple times. There was like nothing really there from the dye and the color and the toner to grab onto. I'm not sure there's a lot you can do for that. I had to just kind of literally cut my losses. And at that point I would recommend doing that, or using maybe like a semi-permanent dye where it's more or less staining your hair rather than penetrating your hair. Manic Panic dye, or at Sally's you can get other semi-permanent dyes, or even something like the Fanciful or Rue color rinse. I have a video on that. I'll link that down below, which is basically a temporary color that you rinse in your hair and just let it dry there, and it's kind of an amazing witchcraft product. But anyway, I'll let you see that for yourself. Anyway, I'm losing my voice from talking so much. I hope this video was helpful. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and also please subscribe to me. It means the world to me. I get so many awesome comments from you guys every day about how I've helped you and you guys give me awesome advice that I really do take. So thank you guys so much for being a part of it, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.